Hello, thank you for joining us for Unite for Sight's webinar about marketing and communication to engage your audience. My name is Jennifer Staple-Clark, and I am founder and chief executive officer of Unite for Sight. I'll start by briefly introducing you to Unite for Sight, and then we'll review the webinar logistics and then hear from our 5 expert panelists. Unite for Sight is a global health nonprofit organization that promotes high-quality care for all, and we offer extensive global health and social entrepreneurship education programs. Our Global Health University program, for example, offers this free webinar series, including today's webinar, and we also offer 20 online certificate programs for students and professionals, and many students receive academic credit for completion of our certificates, and many professionals pursue the certificates for various professional development purposes. The certificate topics range from a certificate in global health and a certificate in global health research to a certificate in social entrepreneurship and certificate in responsible NGO management. This is our last webinar of the spring, and we'll resume webinars again in September. And we encourage you to access past webinar recordings and also to register for future webinars on our website at uniteforsight.org/webinars. In addition to these programs, we also have other educational opportunities for students and professionals as well, including participation in Unite for Sight's annual Global Health and Social Entrepreneurship events, which focus on responsible global engagement and innovation. Our 13th annual Global Health and Innovation Conference, which is the world's largest global health and social entrepreneurship conference, will be held next April on April 16th and 17th, 2016 at Yale University, so definitely save the date. And the conference website, abstract submissions, and registrations will launch in May 2015. And complete details about our annual conference can be seen on our website at uniteforsight.org/conference. And we'll also be having a Social Entrepreneurship Institute in the fall as well, and it will be our 3rd annual Social Entrepreneurship Institute. We additionally have healthcare delivery programs that provide care to patients living in extreme poverty. And these programs work with phenomenal local eye clinics in Ghana, Honduras, and India to provide quality eye care to patients who are otherwise unable to access or afford care. And these programs are locally led and managed by local medical professionals, and our collaboration has provided eye care to 2 million people by the local doctors during the past decade, including more than 90,000 sight-restoring surgeries by the local ophthalmologists. And Unite for Sight is the world's only organization that is both a healthcare delivery organization that also offers immersive global health education and social entrepreneurship opportunities for students and professionals. Participants support and learn from the local doctors in Ghana, Honduras, and India as they provide care to patients living in poverty in the villages, slums, and refugee camps. Participants then learn from those local medical professionals about patient barriers to care and about effective strategies to reach the hardest to reach patients who are otherwise unable to access or afford the care. And the local doctors are incredible social entrepreneurs who design effective and innovative strategies to eliminate these patient barriers to care. Now that I've described about Unite for Sight, I'll next describe about the basic logistics of this webinar. And we're so delighted to have all of you with us today. We have 5 incredible panelists, and they all have a wealth of expertise to share with you during this next hour. Each panelist will begin by giving a 2-minute introduction about themselves and their current role, as well as their key piece of guidance regarding marketing and communications. And then we'll dedicate the remaining time to your questions and answers. And we received many stellar questions already submitted from you, our audience, by Tuesday's question submission deadline. And we then selected the most common and most thoughtful questions to ask our panelists. We also invite you to submit additional questions today in the text box on the left of your webinar screen, and we'll then select additional questions to ask the panelists today as well. We also encourage you to tweet about the webinar, including your key lessons learned, by using the hashtag GHUWebinar, and you can see the hashtag in the webinar visuals on your screen. Now we'll proceed with having each of our panelists introduce themselves in alphabetical order. And I'm delighted to introduce you to our first panelist, Jane Aronson. Jane, please begin by introducing yourself, your background and current role, and please share your key guidance about marketing and communications.
Okay, so can everyone hear me? We're good?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So my name is Dr. Jane Aronson, and I'm a pediatrician by training. Background in infectious diseases and AIDS, And in September of 1997, I created a foundation called Worldwide Orphans, which has as its mission to transform the lives of orphan children and vulnerable at-risk children by using a variety of creative tools, which may include toy libraries, camp, recreation, sport, global theater, dance, music, and we also then provide access to education, medical care, and psychosocial support, which also focuses on learning disabilities and special needs. Now, the marketing part for us is extremely important for many reasons, and it's, make it simple, it's about awareness and obviously about increasing our revenue. We have a $4 million operating budget with 9 full-time employees. We're in 5 countries. We've been in 14, and we have, I think, a fair amount of experience with the old methods and now the new methods. And social media, I think, is really something that's, clearly maligned, misunderstood, especially around the fact that people, early on felt that it would replace lots of very simple techniques, which I don't think it does replace them. I think it just takes them to a higher level. And so what that simply means, and then I'll close, is that we're telling a story. I'm going to talk about that in this hour. I'm going to go back to that over and over again. We have a full-time communications and marketing person, and she tells stories every day. We go to our staff abroad, who are hundreds. We go to the children, where many of them can obviously tell their own stories. And we every day, without fail, every day, several times a day, we post. We do blog posts, and we post stories with photographs, video clips, and we use this to grow awareness and also, obviously, to help improve our revenue. I think that's it for now.
Great. Thank you so much, Jane. And Jenny, Beth, if you can also please introduce yourself.
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Jenny, and I lead global communications for a social enterprise based in East Africa called One Acre Fund. And my role there within the organization is really to oversee the media relations globally. We operate in 6 countries right now, to produce the content and oversee the officers in the field who are bringing farmer stories to the forefront, taking photographs, all the content that really is generated from the field on a day-to-day basis. Also, our digital portfolio. So we actually have 3 websites and hopefully consolidating to 1 soon, as well as, our 7 social media platforms and our Google AdWords and all the other digital assets that we have. Prior to One Acre Fund, I led communications for a nonprofit called Slow Food, the opposite of fast food, for about 4 years. And prior to that, I worked for Mike Bloomberg for about 8 years. And my key learning, or something I'd like to really share with you up front over the last 15 years, I think I've really there are a lot of organizations who will proceed with a communications plan or project or strategy without really knowing their audience. And so I would say, do you know your followers? Do you really know who they are? Do you know who your newsletter subscribers are? And so to take that time to do that market research on your audiences, both existing and the ones you would like to court, and to make sure that you're catering your strategy accordingly. Quick example to illustrate that point. When I joined One Acre Fund, I inherited a newsletter. And through researching the list, what we found out through testing and A/B tests and things like that was that the majority of our lists actually want to know about jobs. They didn't want farmer stories from the field, which was the majority of the content we were sending them, and still are. So we're in the process of retooling that. But, for about a year, we were sending people content to their email inboxes that was not necessarily what they were looking for. And so you can really see how the return on the investment declines in terms of staff time there. So really know your audience. If you don't have the tools to understand who your subscribers are because you haven't asked questions, on the website to understand, who is signing up for that kind of stuff, to hire an outside firm or vendor or consultant who can help you do some surveying and testing so you really understand that you're adding content that is adding value to their day and not just contributing to the overall noise of communications in our lives.
Terrific. Thank you so much, Jenny. And Tyler Gage, please also introduce yourself.
Hey everyone, great to be on the call. My name is Tyler Gage. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Runa. We're a social enterprise based in Ecuador. Our mission is to improve livelihoods for indigenous farming families in the Amazon. And we do that principally by building value chains for sustainable Amazonian products and then selling those through consumer goods in the United States. So our main product line, which hopefully some people know, is a beverage line called Runa. We source a rare kind of Amazonian tea. It's a leaf called guayusa. It has about as much caffeine as coffee, double the antioxidants of green tea. It's a really fantastic product that we've built a fair trade supply chain for, working with 3,000 indigenous Quichua farming families in the Ecuadorian Amazon. We're a hybrid organization. We have a for-profit, non-profit structure. Companies in Ecuador, now through the United States. On the U.S. side, we're heavily involved in marketing and consumer brands. We're in about 8,000 stores nationwide, everything from Whole Foods, Safeway, Vitamin Shoppe, GNC, all of the above. And then on our Runa Foundation side, a lot of our funding is from family offices or family foundations and multilaterals like MacArthur and USAID and all that. And then we have our stakeholders, obviously, in Ecuador and Peru, the communities who we're benefiting. So in terms of marketing, I look at it as a multi-stakeholder approach as well. And I actually would echo the main advice of knowing your audience. I would say in our work, we deal with everything from indigenous farmers through buyers of Whole Foods, through consumers on Amazon, and just about everything in between, investors, donors. And I would say my job, and I think our team's job, is constantly to understand the different audiences and be able to relate to them with what they're most interested in and communicate the dramatic difference and overt benefit of Runa, our work, our impact, our product, our story, in ways that our audience cares about. So I think that's my main seed of knowledge or recommendation, and look forward to the conversation.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Tyler. And Eve Hine, please introduce yourself as well.
Thank you, Jennifer, and thank you, Unite for Sight. I'm delighted to be here and admire the vast work that you do. My name is Eve Hine. I'm the Eve in Eve Hine Communications. I specialize in global health communications, and I love it. I work with some great NGOs on issues like HIV, TB, malaria, maternal and child health, nutrition. I get to work with foundations in this space, and I work with companies that have strong global health programs. Before communications, I worked as a journalist at mainstream newspapers and magazines. My key guidance is first to recognize that we do work in a very, very challenging field when it comes to communications. A lot of us work with health experts, scientists that use technical language, NGOs that use a lot of jargon. Some of us partner with companies that are wedded to their marketing and business speak. And my key advice is, like Jenny said and Tyler said, never lose sight of your audience. Know your audience, reach them, speak your audience's language, cut through the jargon, leave the technical language to the experts, be clear, be concise, and show impact.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Eve. And our final of our 5 panelists, Colleen Hutchins, please introduce yourself as well.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us this afternoon, and thanks, Unite for Sight, for having all of us. My name is Colleen Hutchins, and I'm the Senior Director of Online Strategies and Fundraising for Environmental Working Group. My main role here at EWG is to oversee our online and low-dollar fundraising program. This includes overseeing our email marketing and our ads campaigns. It also includes working very, very closely with our web, social media, and mobile app teams. Not only am I focused on dollars coming into the door and meeting budget goals, but also making sure that our message and our research is really, really getting out into the community, and also engaging activists, and really trying to get people to take the next step besides just reading a research report, but sending a letter as well. not only can I triple and quadruple the concept of knowing your audience and knowing what role you play in your life, but in their lives, but I think one of the biggest things that all strategists can think about, everyone can think about when they're developing new campaigns, is what is your organization's mission statement? What is the ultimate goal? And is this campaign actually going to help move that goal forward and really live your organization's mission statement? I think when you keep this in mind, it really helps drive the direction that your campaigns go in, what maybe tools and tactics that you use or might be the most beneficial. And then sort of the flip side of that is not only sort of the esoteric mission goal, but then having really exact measures of success. Are you trying to get 1,500 petition signatures, land this one specific grant, get people on the ground in a new community? And that way you know if the energies that you're putting into a campaign and the resources that you're putting into a campaign are really, truly worth it, and if you're actually doing what you set out to do.
Great. Thank you so much, Colleen. And thank you to all of our panelists. As you heard, they have such a wealth of expertise and guidance to share with you today. Now we'll proceed with the question and answer session. As mentioned, we received questions in advance from you, our audience members. And if you have additional questions today, please post them in the text box on the left of your webinar screen, and we'll select additional questions from the questions that you submit today. For our first question, Colleen, what strategies does Environmental Working Group use to fundraise online? And also, what are the most successful strategies for engaging a large audience in a fundraising campaign?
Oh, that's such a fabulous question. There are a lot of really, really great strategies out there, but I think the one that is sort of easiest to reuse over and over is to be able to recognize and utilize key moments to create agency or create urgency and engage your audience. And key moments can mean a variety of different things, like air quote, real moments. There's a major congressional vote happening tomorrow, or there's been some sort of natural disaster or outbreak where you need the funds right away. Then there can also sort of be some calendar-based messaging and moments that you can latch on to, like the end of a budget deadline. If your fiscal year is about to end, December 31st is really popular among nonprofits, or the end of quarter is really popular for political campaigns. If you ever give out free gifts in thanks to donations, you can use the shipping deadline. Like if you want to get this in time for Mother's Day, you have to make your donation by midnight, April 23rd, or something like that. And then the other type of key moment, I think, is kind of reactionary, and I mean reactionary to your own audience. If you have a piece of content that goes out and you are seeing more clicks on an email than you have ever seen before in your entire life, the next email that goes out should probably be a fundraiser directly related to that piece of content and what was so engaging about it. If you do advocacy work and you're finding that a petition is just going gangbusters, pivot directly to a fundraising ask, and I mean that in two different ways. You can either go directly from your petition page to, say, a donate page instead of a thank you page, or the next email that goes out can be a donate ask. Another thing that you can react to really well and really utilize is if someone says something publicly that's just completely bananas, and you just have to call them out, and you have to get all your supporters to stand with you to make sure that this misinformation won't stand. or if there's some other type of major news event where issues that you work on are just being talked about a lot and are really becoming part of the zeitgeist. You don't want to let those moments pass you by. So I really believe in utilizing and recognizing key moments, and those can either be things that you sort of manufacture yourself or just being able to turn on a dime and respond to what's going on around you.
That's wonderful. Thank you, Colleen. And a question for Jenny. You mentioned doing research on your audience. What are some best practices that you have in regard to doing your research on your audience?
Yeah, sure. There's a lot of ways to understand your audience, and I want to also throw in there your target audience as well, because you may be communicating to a set of people who are not actually the ideal set of audiences that you want to be communicating to, so really treating those both as equal. So, there are a variety of tactics. You can do surveying. I think that the best tip I can give you now that's actionable is really to construct your digital platforms. Let's say it's your website for a newsletter sign up, for example, or your email list, whatever that list is that you're building, to make sure that you are building the site to prompt the user to enter information upon signing up about themselves, so you know who they are. So, for example, you don't want to do surveying all the time. It's annoying for the user to have to fill out. You're not going to get a full sample. You're not going to get, a full audience representation of that. You'll get a sample of that. But the best practice really is to know who your audience is the moment they start following you. So with an email list, you want to have prompts on the site to ask who they are. Now, you want to keep that easy so you don't have an users abandoning signing up for the list halfway through because you're asking too many questions. But you also want to check in, over time. The list will change. People will attrit out. You'll gain new followers. Some of the lists, for example, at One Acre Fund, some of our email lists, our lists were combined, and so we used to have more.
The host has joined the conference.
More segmented, communications, and then the list was combined at some point prior to my arrival, actually. So I didn't know where the other lists were coming from. Were they major donors? Were they more advocacy interested in? So, I do think that surveying over time is useful, but the key takeaway and best practice would be to prompt questions at the very start of sign-up. So we could go down a rabbit hole of talking about all the various tactics of marketing research to get into. But like I said, if you don't have the expertise in-house to do that right away, or the systems, that's definitely something that's worth fighting for, to invest in, and to take that to the budget managers and say this is a really important item, and to plan for that, to have an outside firm do some of that research for you so you know who you're communicating to, so that you can add value to their daily lives.
Excellent. Thank you, Jenny. And Tyler, what are your suggestions for strategies to effectively communicate with investors or other funders, and what do you wish that you had known at the start?
That's a great question. I'd say a couple things. First is have very polished materials. I'm a big proponent of spending whatever money you need to make sure your business plan, your investor deck look incredibly tight, incredibly professional, and very well polished. It's sort of the first gate of entry if people want to say, wow, this company, this organization is taking time to really make a presentation that looks professional, polished, forward-thinking, thorough, all of the above. Honestly, at this point, we rarely send our full business plan to people, and pretty much almost always just send the investor deck. We have 12 to 15 slides, super tight to the point, and I would say that's 80 to 90% of what I send out. And I think early on we tried to send out our 75-page business plan, and it was just too much information. So that is one. The other thing that we did early on is, I studied creative writing, and my business partner studied marine biology, and our plan was to build an entire supply chain in the middle of the Amazon and then start a beverage company to compete with Red Bull, which obviously wasn't a particularly convincing proposition as college kids. and most people didn't take it seriously, no surprise. So what we did with potential investors is we often talk to people and tell them what seems like a very cockamamie plan, and they say, hey, that sounds really interesting, but no way you guys are going to accomplish what you're saying you are. So what we would do is we tell them, okay, well, here's our 3-month plan. Here are the 10 things we're going to do in the next 3 months. Early days to make progress and really execute towards the big vision. And they say, yeah, great, okay, you'll be out of business in 3 months. Go for it. And then 3 months later, we come back to them and say, hey, remember the 10 things I told you? Here are the exact results. Here's the deliverables. And we basically proved our legitimacy and proved our ability to execute behind short-term and medium-term goals. So I would say a lot of investors or donors that take lots of time to build relationships with. In the entrepreneur mode, you often want talk to someone and 5 minutes later have them wire your money, which is always the pipe dream, but rarely happens. So a lot of it is building relationships, building credibility, and then keeping that ongoing conversation open with investors or potential investors who can continue to show them deliverables, results, progress, and build confidence to the point that you hopefully get an investment done.
Terrific. Thank you, Tyler. And Colleen, how often can and should donation solicitations be sent to supporters or followers? And if someone donates once, when can you next ask them for another donation?
This is going to sound like a cop-out answer, but it's really not. Trust me. I think you can send solicitations for donations to your email list as often as your email list can handle it, and whenever you have a compelling reason for your supporters to give. What I mean by that is EWG, we ask our audience for donations on an almost monthly basis, sending anywhere from 2 to 4 fundraising emails a month. Every list is different, and we'll respond to fundraising asks differently. And we've slowly been working up to this volume over the course of several years as we have seen that our email list responds really well to donation solicitations. Signs that your list can't handle it and you might want to scale it back, your unsubscribe rates just go through the roof on the same messages where no one's donating. And if you start to see that, roll back, scale back a little bit. There's no sense in sending out campaigns that just aren't working. On the flip side, you don't want to treat your list like a cash machine. As several people have said, you want to send something that they value, that is meaningful and adds to their lives. So do try to space out your campaigns. Put content in between fundraising asks that they really want and they really need from you, and you're the only person or organization that they're going to get that information from. And also give them other ways to get involved. Some people will change their profile picture on Facebook, but they won't donate, or they will pick up the phone and call their member of Congress, but they won't donate. So make sure everyone has some way of feeling engaged and part of your organization and part of moving your mission forward. As far as recent donors, the way we usually structure it is we suppress recent donors throughout a campaign. So if you donate to the first email, you're not going to get the second or the third email in the series. When we start the next campaign, people get rolled right back in. There is an exception to that in our case. We usually do this on December 31st when our budget cycle for the year ends, and we will roll all of our list into the final message of the year. But we do give recent donors slightly different copy that recognizes the fact that they have just given, thanks them profusely for that donation, but then highlights why it's so important that they give another gift right at that moment, usually something along the lines of, Colleen, thank you so much. Your $10 donation yesterday meant everything to us, but this deadline is so important that if we don't meet it, we can't do our work next year. I wouldn't ask again so soon, but this is really the moment where we need you to stand with us.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Colleen. Great guidance. And Jane, how should programs and organizations tell stories while communicating in an ethical and responsible way that doesn't violate privacy?
Oh, I like that a lot. Yeah, well, of course, we have consents, actually, for the kids, and we don't use their photographs unless those consents are signed. So, that's very key, and can't reinforce more that we don't violate children's privacy. But I would say to you that you can tell the story actually, without photos. I know it's ideal to have photos and video, but there are ways to tell the story as long as you make the story short without the photo and the video. So we do a lot of that, and we use, interestingly enough, we can use an old photo, which we might have used in the past, or an old video clip in the past that has some distance that also helps to tell the story and doesn't really require. But one of the story, the impact of really the best stories are the ones where the kids or the staff actually speak themselves. So the video clips where we can interview kids and adults are really they're very strong. And I think in the future we'll be using more and more of those because we want people to be able to tell their own stories. We have currently actually a film on our website that we've been doing films for the last 11 years, and we invest in a filmmaker. I usually write and direct and produce along with the documentary filmmaker because I kind of know the story. Also, I love making films. But we use those films to help tell the stories, and we have them narrated, if you will, by the people in the particular countries. And the one we have now on the website is a nice example, which is called The Birth of Altruism, which really is an interview with each of the staff in Haiti, and they had no rehearsal, and they had no questions beforehand, and I just stood with them or sat with them, and we had a conversation, and the goal was to find out whether they thought that their work had changed them. And that was the theme, like what has happened to them over time in their work. And I think that the more we learn about how people feel about the work they do, I think we definitely gain by learning about how we can self-correct. Our mission and our vision is really dependent on how people feel about themselves in that particular setting. And we might miss that unless we allow them to freely tell their story all on their own.
Wonderful. Thank you, Jane. And Jenny, how does One Acre Fund focus on responsible storytelling, and how do you ensure that beneficiaries truly want to have their stories shared with the public?
Such a great question. I think it's something that a lot of NGOs don't pay enough attention to, so I was really pleased to see this question. So One Acre Fund works with over 200,000 smallholder farmers with about 1 acre of land, and they're living off that land, usually with 1 or 2 crop harvests throughout the year, and that food is going to feed them for the entire year. I say that because I really feel my responsibility as leading the communications globally is not just to tell their stories, but to hand them the microphone and to amplify their voices, let them amplify their voices. So it's very rare, and we have communications officers in each of the countries that we work in, but it's very rare that we would be telling a story of a farmer that we don't have a long-lasting relationship with. Our leadership and 96% of our staff are based in East Africa. They're living alongside the clients we work with every day. They're members of the community. They get invited to weddings and to birth celebrations and to funerals, on a weekly basis. So it's absolutely a key priority. It's something that I've actually sort of instituted among my team, is to make sure that, never does a photo go out, shouldn't go out, and if you see one, tell me, without the farmer's permission at a minimum, but without their names and a bit about them and their story. Because ideally, we're doing that in service for the farmers, not just using their content or their images to, raise emotional energy or funds with that. That's not the goal. Our goal is truly to hand them a microphone. I believe that's the mission of our communications department. So, I guess the last thing I'll say is that, building the relationships in the field, we're not just dropping in, expats to interview someone and sending them back to New York to type up the story. I mean, the staff who they're working with are local. They speak the dialect. If they're in Rwanda, they are from Rwanda, likely from the same village that the farmers we work with are in. And we train those staff in photography, and we train those staff in how to do a farmer interview. And so they're members of the community. But one thing I'll say is that when we do visit a farmer, first of all, we schedule it in advance. We ask their permission to visit their home, which is typically a mud hut. 4 or 5 children. It's going to interrupt their day when we come, whether we like it or not. Even if you think you're going to spend just 15 minutes with them, you're not. They're going to roll out the red carpet for you. They're going to pour you tea. They're going to want to have you stay for porridge and to hear about their children. And so often what we'll see is that when we do set up farmer interviews, the whole village will come out. And it's really, they treat it as an honor. They're honored that we're taking the time to help them share their story with the larger world out there. In fact, one of the farmers I recently met with said, please share this. She said, please take my photo and share this with the world. I don't want them to forget about us. But like I said, I think a lot of NGOs do it very poorly. But I think it comes down to what relationship are you building with your client or with the people you work with.
Great. Thank you, Jenny. And actually another question for you, Jenny. How do you balance communicating One Acre Fund's outputs, outcomes, and stories?
Sure. I hope this isn't too simple of an answer, but my sort of knee-jerk reaction to that is you've got to have priorities. So when we did our strategic communications plan for 2015, we have a clear set of priority areas within content to communications. Farmers first is central there. Amplifying the farmer stories, helping to tell their stories, giving them a microphone. And so, telling impact or reporting on impact, for example, is never going to come at the expense or taking the place of giving the farmer the microphone. And so really making sure your priorities are clear there. So for us, for this year, that those content priorities, actually telling our impact is actually not part of it. It's there. We report on the website. It's there for you to look at. But I don't know that I want to be part of that organization that's talking about the organization. This is how good we are at this. This is how good we are at that. No, that information should be transparently available. But our clear priority is to put the farmer first. And then we have, some secondary priorities in communications. For example, we're really trying to stimulate a movement worldwide for rural microfinance, microfinance that supports people in the most rural areas by making smaller loan sizes and things like that, because a lot of them have been left behind. And so that's another communications priority, but it is not given equal attention as the interactions with our farmers. So really setting clear priorities at the start and then letting the team run with that. Let your digital person run with that. Let your content person run with that and coordinate on that level because the priority is set and clear.
Wonderful. Thank you. And Jane, what are the most effective marketing and communication strategies that can be used when an organization has a limited staff and a limited budget?
That's really a question that can be asked about anything that we do, right? There's such a limited budget. I would say that, what is it that we really want to spend a lot of money on? I mean, that's what when I sit with my team, we sit and we'd say, what kind of money do we need? Because I think they feel as if they don't have enough money to do the things they want to do. Number one, let me sort of attack PR a little bit, because we have utilized PR for many years and had a very lovely relationship with a fairly well-known PR firm. And then gradually we learned a lot from them. And so we lessened our involvement with them. And then we really actually gave up PR. And this is a common issue for people across the board running non-for-profits, that, you sometimes sort of get addicted to a PR approach to things, and then you don't realize that you really actually have the skills. You've had some capacity built, and you can manage most things on your own. I think certainly the involvement of celebrity comes up, and we have a celebrity platform which doesn't really require PR because we've developed it over time, over many, many years on our own, and we've owned it. We didn't really develop it through PR. And so that's been a really wonderful awakening, actually. And then the things that really come up that are expensive are likely things around branding and strategic planning, and how those obviously are part and parcel of one another. And those are also extremely expensive to get a company in to help brand an organization and do the strategic planning that's necessary for public awareness. That I will have to tell you that you need to be searching for a company that will do that for you pro bono, because it's extremely costly. And really that's how we functioned over the last few years. I was busy always asking anyone I knew who they knew, young companies that were capable of doing really great work with large corporations. And we found through our network a fantastic group called Marvel Citizen that's providing with us for us trademarks for our programs, and then on top of that pro bono strategy and branding. And we've done a fair amount of branding on our own, interestingly enough, and you can do that as an organization. You get to know yourself, and you know what's important for you, and you read and you study and you're experiential. So I highly recommend getting involved with young companies to do pro bono work, and to always be building your capacity so that you can become independent, even if you're a small group. It's pretty exciting to realize that you have skills in-house. We've never outsourced an event. We raise $1.5 million or more every year at our gala, and we've never outsourced it. We looked into outsourcing, and every time we did, we realized that the people who would come in and do it for you still needed for you to do a good deal of the work. And so we didn't give it up. We just taught ourselves how to do it. So I guess I'm going to vote for sharing with you that self-teaching and experience are very powerful.
Fantastic. Thank you, Jane. And Jane, also, you've been able to engage a lot of celebrities. How do you engage them, and then how do you advise them to rally further support among the public?
Okay. I should tell you that, and probably lots of people can, Google and see that we've had a fair amount of good luck on this. But, some of the celebrity platform, because I run an organization that's about children, were, celebrities who adopted children, and including Angelina Jolie and Mary Louise Parker and Connie Britton, Kristen Davis, Shonda Rhimes. I mean, there's a lot of folks who adopted children both domestically and internationally, Hugh and Deb Jackman. And so that was a good match for us because though we're not about adoption, we're about orphans, and the vast majority of them not being adopted, which is, a good thing, because that's not a solution for children in their own countries, finally. But so that brought the kind of celebrities who really were family-oriented. It's a keen awareness of the value of family that really shaped the platform, because these are folks who really aren't that focused on being famous, even though obviously a few of the ones I just mentioned are very famous. A lot of these folks really are focused on their family and avoid a lot of the celebrity traps, which ruin the lives of the family and the child. And so a lot of our celebrities actually going forward are, if they're not married or have children, they're young people who actually do not want to be as high profile. And that has great value, and that includes people like Andrew Garfield, Emma Stone, and these are folks that really work very hard as actors. They're very successful. They do theater and movies, but they also care about their causes. Emma is very involved in breast cancer, and Andrew loves children's causes, especially things related to sport and play. So my focus for the celebrity platform is really about people who are people. Amy Poehler is our main arts ambassador. She's not an adoptive parent but has 2 young children, and we met through other networks, and we are very close friends. I think that anyone who does celebrity platforms should know that you have to have a relationship with this high-profile person, and you have to develop a closeness and a friendship because you can't access them otherwise. They have many levels of managers and publicists, et cetera, who are very helpful and lovely, by the way. But if the layers are too deep, then the relationship is not available. And all of my celebrity relationships are people I like and who like me, and they like the organization and the mission, and it's a partnership. And so they really care, and they strategize with me. I'm meeting with Amy next week in LA, and we're going to be sitting down and talking about how all her new work will encompass charity and represent the public awareness that's necessary for WWO, but it's going to be well thought out and strategic because she wants to do it. She requested it of me. And so I think there's a misunderstanding on how to use celebrity, and I feel like I'm pretty certain that the way we use it is extremely moral. It's a moral compass that we use to engage people who want to do good. And I'm not just saying that. This is not faux, and this is something that I've worked, thousands of hours on. I've gone to many lectures. I've had lots of mentors in this area, people from International Rescue Committee, Save the Children, UNICEF, who've had celebrity platforms over the years. And truly, the most successful platforms are due to solid long-term relationships.
Great. Thank you so much, Jane. And Eve, what is an example of a marketing or communication experience that should have gone well but ended up being a failure, and what was learned from that experience?
I observed an example recently that many of you can relate to and that all of the communications professionals in the audience struggle with daily. In this situation, an NGO had a news story, it had a milestone, and it was looking to pitch the story. A new drug that it has been developing had great results in a clinical trial, and the results were being published in the Lancet, so you had a pretty good news peg. And this drug was for a major infectious disease that, desperately needs new and better drugs. But the story fell flat. It didn't get much coverage. It didn't get traction. And there were some key lessons learned there, which were, in this case, don't forget the fundamentals. And I would just start with something as simple and as basic as the email subject line, which had the long name of a drug that no one has heard of and no one can pronounce, right? Of course, you want a short, urgent subject line because I think something like 2/3 of people open their email based on the subject line alone, and a reporter will spend less than a second on the subject line before deciding whether to delete a press release. And that phone fits 40 characters in it, so you really have to make them count and get straight to the point. And the headline, let's move on to the headline. The headline matters most. It will determine if someone reads on. So you have to get to the point right away, shout it out in the headline. And in this case, the press release had a lot of technical language in it about the trial, and it would have worked well for insiders and perhaps a couple of niche publications that do deep, deep science. So you have to really work, a lesson learned here is that a lesson which is a fundamental lesson that everyone in communications knows, but we sometimes lose sight of, is that we have to work with our NGO coworkers, our public health experts, our scientists to make sure in this case the press release cuts to the chase and shows what matters most. And in this case, we wanted lives saved, the potential for lives saved, that it's a cheaper, much more affordable drug, that it shortens the duration time considerably, and it's much less grueling treatment. So again, the lesson learned here kind of goes back to my introduction, which is always remember the communications fundamentals of reaching your audience and using those really basic 101 communications tools of a great headline, work on that subject line, and a really clear, concise, urgent press release that stresses the so what.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Eve. And another question for you, Eve. Oftentimes the media is most willing to be engaged about hot topics such as HIV/AIDS, Ebola, a new technology that seems exciting but might not get past the idea stage, etc. How can organizations with track records of success engage the media about stories which may not seem as exciting as something like a fancy technology idea or an infectious disease?
Well, that's a great question, Jennifer, because I'm sure everyone in the audience is nodding their head and has faced this. During the peak of Ebola, one reporter, we were pitching a story that was really newsy, and a health story, and one reporter said, if it doesn't rhyme with granola, I'm not interested. So not all stories are sexy on their surface. Not all of us here have a new cell phone app that will test for malaria super fast on the spot. And my advice in this case is to ask yourself, again, what is the so what behind this project? So let's take, for example, overhauling or improving a supply chain system to reduce stockouts of medicine. That can sound kind of boring. But the bottom line of this project is that thousands, perhaps even millions of the poorest people in hard-to-reach areas aren't getting medicines that can save their lives because of a supply chain problem, because the shelves are empty. And so you had the Global Fund to Fight AIDS, TB, and Malaria, for example, has worked with Coca-Cola to revamp the supply chain system in parts of Africa, to get HIV, TB, and malaria medicines on the shelves. And I believe it was a Gates Foundation that did some really great graphics and promotions and communications around that. You can get Coca-Cola anywhere in the world, but how can you get life-saving medicine to people who need it most as well? So just another example that comes to mind is, let's say you're working on a computer program that shows where you need ambulances in a remote area to get women going into labor to birthing facilities. A computer program on the surface sounds really boring. But if you can show through some of these examples that we've discussed today, these women's stories, and show that there are spots where women cannot get to a birthing facility, that this is an area that has a high maternal death rate, that there's simply no transportation, and this computer program will lead to getting women to birthing facilities, then that puts it on another level. So even if the work that you do is incremental, think about its end result, the so what. what does it support? And then you have a pretty good story to tell.
Jane here. Do I have a minute to say something, Jen?
Yes, that sounds great.
Okay. I just wanted to say that one of the things that I found so challenging over the last few years is the MailChimp and other vehicles like that, where we're relying on a very small receipt percentile and then opening rate, and I feel like a lot of those figures are pretty faux, and that there's a kind of industry rate that we all subscribe to. This is what gets passed down to all of us, and I feel that they're really not useful. I'm very opposed to MailChimp. I have to fight with the young people in my office about it. And so, we do every so often we'll do something that's MailChimp, but we really target our donors and focus on categories of donors. And we're very focused on increasing the number of people who are supporting the foundation who are between 18 and 32. We're going to have these daybreaker events are really, I think, the way to go. I'm suggesting to people that they look it up. It's a new phenomenon internationally where people dance and do yoga early in the morning. There's no drugs and alcohol. And you can get, 500 to 1,000 people in a space, and they can dance, and then there can be charitable relationships that are set up. We're going to do one with daybreakers on October 30th in New York at Pier 40 on the Hornblower Yacht. You can look them up, and what that can lead to is increasing the numbers of donors you have in that age group. Because I think really, I'm 63, and I don't want anybody, I don't want to increase the donor base with people in their 50s and 60s at this point. I want people who are in their teens, 20s, and 30s who are, I want to drive them to us. I want them to understand that kind of giving and support, that it's a growing process for them as young people. They may give very little at this point. With that, we also have a junior board that's incredibly important for social media and communications. So I just wanted to sort of sneak that in here, that we all should be eager to, looking at the age group of who we communicate with. It's extremely and excruciatingly important.
That's fantastic. Thank you, Jane. And our last question, Tyler, how has your branding and marketing evolved through the years as your company has grown?
Quite a lot is the short answer. We have a fairly complicated product in its essence. I mean, it's a bit of a tricky proposition because there's so many different benefits and aspects to our product. The White leaf has as much caffeine as coffee. It has double antioxidants for green tea. It's one of the only teas in the world that's grown by family farms. It's fair trade. It's organic. It's from Ecuador. It's Amazonian. And it's been a big process of figuring out which pieces to lead with, how to communicate those most effectively, the sort of harmonized touch points between design, bottle copy, PR, digital media, and just figuring out the right way to play all these different pieces. And it's been a huge learning experience. I think early on, we took the strategy of trying to communicate the mission and the sourcing much more heavily, because for us, that's what we're so passionate about, is the sourcing, living in Ecuador and all of that. And I think we felt like we went probably too far in that direction early on and overshadowed the core benefits of the product. You drink a bottle of Runa, it has great energy, it tastes great, low calorie, all that good stuff, and we then pivoted a bit to put the product more forward so that people who appreciated the sustainability could get that information. But it really, a lot of people say, hey, Runa's a great tasting iced tea. That's a very scalable proposition. At the same time, we're now in a phase where thinking that we push the authenticity of the story, what we do, too far down on a brand hierarchy, and now actually working to weave that back in more visibly and more prominently in our communications. So I think in terms of startup or organizational growth lessons from that, I think the first is you have to be willing to pivot. You absolutely have to be willing to put things out, understand they're not perfect, and learn from your customers and your stakeholders. So you always want to have your ear to the ground, tons of feedback, and be able to leave that in real time. You can't feel protective or personally if people don't like things. You need to actively look for dissatisfied people who don't like what you're doing, so you can learn from them and improve. I would say that's a high-level summary.
Excellent. Thank you, Tyler, and thank you so much to all of the phenomenal pearls of wisdom and guidance and advice from our 5 panelists. This concludes today's webinar. Thank you so much again to all of our panelists as well as to our audience for joining us. Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye. Thanks so much.